Hello, welcome to History Laid Bare. I am the Bear. I sought the help of YouTube's AI recently, and it said the one thing I need to do to improve my videos, there were many, but the main thing was make my openings quicker, make them more exciting for those with shorter attention spans who tend to click off, will stay for the whole video. Oh no, we lost the goldfish. Just kidding, we appreciate the goldfish. But you who have stayed, thank you. Today we're doing Thomas Cromwell. Thomas Cromwell was born in 1485 in Putney. We do not know the exact month. However, what's interesting about 1485 is the Battle of Bosworth happened in 1485. So he was basically born at the change of an age. The Plantagenets had ruled England for over 300 years. That is put to an end by Henry Tudor, Henry VII. And Thomas Cromwell was born right in the middle of this change. He was a man of the era, a modern Tudor, as people have referred to him as. So what do we know of Cromwell's parents? Thomas Cromwell's father, respected man of the place. He was called up for jury duty many times. He was elected constable of the area. He owned a tavern, a mill. He was a bit of a jack of all trades, to be honest with you. A lot of people think he was a blacksmith. However, this might be a misconception because Thomas Cromwell sometimes used the surname Smith, blacksmith. However, English surnames at the time were kind of interchangeable. People used them frequently and changed them frequently. His mother was part of the gentry. However, part of the gentry. She came from a gentry family. We don't know much about his mother, sadly. Thomas Cromwell's early life, he would have had some education provided by perhaps the local church or some local schooling. He must have been a bright boy because what we see throughout Cromwell's life is an eagerness to educate oneself. And there's no doubt he would have been bright. However, a formal education wouldn't have been given to him because his family weren't that wealthy. Thomas Cromwell would later describe his younger years. He would describe himself as a bit of a ruffian. He'd get into some fights, skate around the law, be a bit of a roadman, a gangster. Interesting enough, his father also was caught doing some illegal activities several times, like watering down beer and stuff of that nature, even assault. This is how we show that his family, although quite wealthy, was not well off. You see, if you're well off, you get away with those sort of crimes. You know, it's not like his father was perhaps a member of the Lords and made lingerie for a living and stole millions off the government. I'm not explaining that. Go and look it up. If you're not British, I'm sure you will be very shocked by that one. Yeah, that person is not in jail. That person is not facing any charges whatsoever. Awesome! And so we come to the first major event in Cromwell's life. 1400s-ish. Cromwell decides it's time to spread his tiny wings and fly away. He goes to Europe to find his self-discovery, or find a job, or whatever the reasoning. Goes to Europe, arrives in France. There's a rumour that he becomes part of an army that travels into Italy. He is part of that French army. He is the squire or footman of a foot soldier in the army. This is when Cromwell comes face to face with warfare. After this experience of warfare, he goes to work in Italy for a local banking firm. He grasps the logistics of the economy. He learns foreign languages. All of this happens in dates that we don't know. He must have spoke Italian. He must have spoke French. He must have had a small understanding of Latin, if not even a good understanding of Latin, because he dealt in law. How do we know he spoke these languages? Well, if you're not English and you're French or you're Italian or you're Spanish or whoever you are, if you don't trade with England, you have no need to speak English. Nobody speaks English. Nobody respects the language. Why? Because as my wife would say,
It was French.
he didn't like it.
Because he was French. The French hate us.
At some point in 1515, he travels back to England to marry his wife. It's a lovely moment. Look at me there. I'm the priest. Elizabeth Wickers. Wickers. I'm pretty sure it's still Wickers with a Y. Was his wife's name. They would go on to have 3 children together. Gregory Cromwell, Anne Cromwell, and Grace Cromwell. Unfortunately, Elizabeth and Anne Grace would pass away in 1529. Cromwell would never remarry, which perhaps shows a loyalty towards his deceased wife. He is a man that was very, very loyal, and obviously her death would have affected him, but I think we see a life full of grieving after this point, and the fact that he didn't remarry, I think, contributes to that. 1518, we're back in England. So, Thomas Cromwell comes back. The Guild of Boston, St. Mary's Guild of Boston, have a job for Cromwell. He is to travel to Rome to convince Pope Leo X to let them sell indulgences. What are indulgences? They are, wow. So you used to be able to purchase time off purgatory. So purgatory is like this place between heaven or hell. Why am I explaining this? You all know what purgatory is. Read Dante's Inferno if you don't. No, Divine Comedy, not Dante's Inferno. Divine Comedy, read it. So the amount of time you spend in purgatory can be shortened by prayers loved ones makes and acts of devotion they make after you die. You can buy indulgences to shorten your amount of time in there. 500 gold, you get 10 years off your sentence. 20 gold, you will ignore that car tire you stole, donkey you stole. I don't know. It's a weird idea. The fact that you can take money off your sentence in purgatory, I mean, it just shows the power the Catholic Church had at the time. Oh yes, pay this and I promise you'll only be in purgatory for half hour. What? The main takeaway here is that he was successful. He convinces Pope Leo to let Boston still sell indulgences. How does he do it though? Well, he researches the man he needs to convince. Thomas Cromwell is a brilliant manipulator. He is brilliant at identifying weaknesses. And what are Pope Leo's weaknesses? He's got a sweet tooth. So, Cromwell devises the most wonderful sweetie treats, some nice cakes, perhaps some Ferrero Rochers. And he knows that he loves music. So he gets the local choir boys to sing him the most beautiful choral music. He does this while Pope Leo is out hunting. So he is already engaging him when he is having fun, when he's in a good mood. Basically, it's the equivalent of asking this bear a favour when I'm painting Warhammer figurines while watching Lord of the Rings, about to chow into a nice salmon dinner. Salmon. 1524. Thomas Cromwell enters the service of Lord Chancellor Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. Now, the hawk-eyed of you are going to be wondering, why haven't you mentioned his early occupation before that? And my answer to you is, this is a simplified version of his life. I am not mentioning his occupation that lasted less than a year. We're skipping it and going to Cardinal Wolsey. And he becomes a loyal servant of Wolsey. He sorts out many matters for him. He becomes a legal advisor. There is a deep devotion to Wolsey from Cromwell, and you feel like there is a mutual love. Wolsey came from humble beginnings as Cromwell did, and perhaps there was a connection there. And this would have been a cosy life for Thomas Cromwell. If Wolsey remained in power and in favour by Henry VIII, I don't think we would have remembered Cromwell. I think he would have accepted his nice cushy job under the service of Wolsey, and history would have forgotten about him. However, 1526, Anne Boleyn shows up on the scene with her nice duckies, and all of a sudden, Henry VIII wants to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon. Wolsey goes about this by asking for a divorce from the Pope. The main reason given is that Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII are married through the first stage of affinity. Basically, Catherine of Aragon was married to Henry VIII's brother, Prince Arthur, and when he died, Henry VIII married her. Now, the Bible says, "One should not marry my brother's widow." So the Pope had to give special dispensation for Henry VIII to marry her. Henry VIII has now gone back on that and said, that shouldn't have happened. That I want a divorce. This is the reason I don't have any sons. It's definitely not because I want to marry this hot Anne Boleyn who looks like Natalie Dormer. No, it's nothing to do with that. I need to divorce my wife. Wolsey can't get this. The Pope is obviously not going to give this. Also, letters that Henry VIII wrote to Anne Boleyn are made public about his lust for her. Wolsey fails, and this is kind of the downfall of Wolsey. 1530, Wolsey is accused of holding things up with the divorce. He is accused of not doing a good job of seeking it, and he is arrested. Before he can be put on trial, however, Wolsey passes away. Interesting character trait of Thomas Cromwell. He distanced himself enough that he's successful. He is actually put on the Privy Council that same year, Henry VIII's Privy Council. However, he is honest about his old master, and he does defend him. He was still loyal. And I think that's a really nice quality. How many times do we see people whose bosses or masters fall out of favour and then they're like, oh yeah, I never agreed with him. Cromwell stuck by him, even in death. And it's whole basis of that lovely series called Wolf Hall, this revenge plot that he has against everybody who brought down Wolsey. It's a nice quality to have, that loyalty, because not many people have it even today, and certainly back then they didn't have it. It was a race to the top. 1533. Cromwell gets the divorce and Henry VIII marries Anne Boleyn. He does this in a way that Wolsey would have never done. You see, officially in 1534, the Church of England is born. The Reformation happens. England breaks with Rome. Henry is the supreme head of the church. So it's obviously easy for him to divorce Catherine of Aragon. There's a lot of information on why this happens, but I think people who see this as complicated, and this is just my opinion, are missing one of the major factors. This happens because Henry VIII wants to divorce his wife. Henry VIII is completely self-serving, and you come to him and say, you can be even more powerful than you are. You can not only be the head of state, but also the head of your religion. Henry VIII is going to do it. And I don't think it's that complicated. I think Henry is a spoilt brat and a horrible man. And any chance just to gain a little bit more power, he's going to take it. This is to ends to a means. Hell, England is an ends to a means. He doesn't care about the glory of England. He cares about the glory of Henry. 1534. Cromwell starts his propaganda campaign against the Catholic Church. Plays are written. Sermons are given. Pamphlets are written. All calling the Catholic Church liars and accusing them of the most horrible crimes. Later, he would go after the monasteries. He would set up task force to prove that the monasteries were doing horrible things, and the selling of relics and indulgences and all these things that the Protestant movement was against and the Reformation was against. They disproved relics. So there was the blood of Christ, which was disproven to be fake by this Thomas Cromwell force. And the monasteries were accused of sodomy and basically anything. The record keeping isn't great because they were travelling from abbey to cathedral, and very often the information will get confused. But what we do know is all of this money, all of this moolah was being handed straight to Henry VIII. And this is when Cromwell made his enemy. Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn believed that this money should be used to help the people, which isn't a bad argument. It sounds like a modern argument. Also, you've got to remember these monasteries, the Catholic Church, was a social net, a social security net. If you were poor, monasteries fed you. If you lacked housing, they gave you a place to sleep. They were the first means of charity. They followed the work of Christ, and obviously Christ, don't know if you know this, bit of a good guy. He, said to help the poor and the needy. So by getting rid of these infrastructures, you left the poor, the downtrodden, weaker and more helpless than they were. 1536, the execution of Anne Boleyn. At this point, Thomas Cromwell is Henry VIII's most loyal advisor. He is there by the king's side. If Henry VIII needs something done legally, he needs something carried out, he turns to Thomas Cromwell. This is a man who can't do anything for himself. He can't even wipe his own bum. In a few years, Cromwell has gone from Wolsey's loyal dog, his loyal British pointer, very noble, very nice, to Henry VIII's bull mastiff, his attack dog. Henry VIII wants Anne gotten rid of. Thomas Cromwell makes it happen. She's trialled for treason. She's trialled for incest. Thomas Cromwell puts this together. He puts together the trial, makes sure it has the right outcome for Henry. And the right outcome is Anne's execution. Anne Boleyn's execution, it always makes me just a little sad. Because everybody who comes into contact with Henry is a victim. Henry VIII is an egomaniac, a tyrant, and an awful human being. But this is when we see a shift in Cromwell. Cromwell is not morally clean at this point. He's doing what he's told, of course. Who would go against Henry VIII? However, there's a nice quote from Kingdom of Heaven, isn't there? Where when one stands in front of their God, they cannot say, I did so because I was ordered thus. This will not suffice. I think that fits here. this has been History Laid Bare. I am the Bear. Thank you for listening and watching this part 1 of Thomas Cromwell's major events. Obviously, I've skipped over some bits, but I wanted to just cover the main events. I didn't want to do another Richard III 40-minute video that, I think people found a bit too long. But thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you once again.